In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. I'm very blessed with the opportunity to be working with the choir of St. Jacob of Surut. And today we're going to be talking just a little bit about the history of the Kiahk Psalmody within the Coptic Church, its origin, its significance, and just a little bit about its structure. So originally, the only psalmody that was regularly used in the Coptic Church was the standard one, which is known in Arabic as Senawi, but the more proper translation would be the standard psalmody, and that was used on a daily basis. In its earliest form, it was comprised of the Psalms of the Midnight Hours, which included Psalm 118 Do Uno, which is now known as Tenthino, and the four canticles, which we know as El Hosat, which are praises taken directly from Scripture. Later on, there were Tadakiyat written. Tadakiyat are the original pronunciation of the word for Theotokia. They are called Tadakiyat because of the way that they're pronounced in the Old Coptic. So these Tadakiyat were written and they were attuned. The author was a monk from the wilderness of Shihat, also known now as Shihit or Skeets. And their praises regarding the incarnation, and they focus on the role of the Virgin Mary, along with the prophecies of the Old Testament and the symbols that were placed in the tabernacle and in the laws of Moses. It's important to note, these Tadakiyat, they follow a specific musical structure, which is based on a meter. So we commonly hear the words Adam and Watus being thrown around, but their descriptions are usually inaccurate. So let's take those into a little bit more detail. The word Adam is the first word of the Monday Tadakiya. Adam etif oi is the first stichon in that Tadakiya. And the Adam structure is usually 6 syllables per stichon. Stichon being that first line. Some people use it to refer to a verse, but it's usually referred to as a line. So that first line would you have 6 syllables. So that would be a text written in an Adam style. And typically, a Adam text would have a hymn placed on it that flows with a 6 beat or a 6 syllable per stichon meter. Watus would be 8 syllables. Approximately 8 syllables per stichon. So Watus is the first word of the Thursday Tadakiya. Okay? So the way that they're written has impacted how these hymns are used. So we use Adam hymns mainly in venerations and in the greetings, and Adam is somewhat linked to resurrection time. Watus hymns are mainly used for Vespers and Matins, for doxologies, for gospel responses, for the most part. Given this sort of structure, the Adam Tadakiyas, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, those are not Adam days. They are the days in which the Tadakiyat were written in an Adam structure. The Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday are not Watus days. They're rather days in which the Tadakiyat were written in the Watus meter. Okay? So to sum that up, the terms do not categorize the days of the week, but are meant to indicate the meter in which the Tadakiyah of the day is written in. Just another piece of information about these Tadakiyat. They were primarily used in Lower Egypt, aka the north, which is known as Bahari. Upper Egypt, the Sa'id, was not keen on using these praises, even until the 14th or 15th centuries. And this was documented by Ibn Kabar, who was a ritual scholar at the time. He was a scribe for the government, and he was the priest of the hanging church in the 14th century. And it was reiterated again by other scholars, most recently by Father Athanasius al-Ma'ari. Okay? We'll move on to a brief synopsis of the Kiahk Psalmody. The Kiahk Psalmody was primarily an attempt to revive vigils of praise in the Coptic Church. As proof of this notion, The earliest psalmodies specific to the month of Kiahk were written between the 14th and 15th centuries. We don't have any other psalmodies that's claim that they are specific to the month of Kiahk until that time period. And so most likely it was a revival to kind of restore the praises. And there are other things that we'll go into that kind of indicate the same thing. It's important to note that even when a Kiahk Psalmody was created and did exist, it was not compiled the way we have it now until the time of the printing press. Usually when we have a psalmody, or when we have any ritual text or any hymnological text, it differs from region to region, and that was okay for many, many centuries in Egypt. Given the geographical differences and the hymnological differences we have from different places, it was acceptable. Recently, with the invention and the integration of the printing press into Egypt, we found that our books have now gotten a lot longer, and they include different things from many different regions. So there wasn't really one specific Kiahk Psalmody until very recently. And then the reason why Kiahk Psalmody took its own form was due to a weakening in the nightly praises. I spoke recently with Father Athanasius and Me'eri, who reiterated that at many times the Tazbihah of the days was kind of dwindling. And so what they did was they looked towards the 4 Sundays of Kiahk in preparation for the Feast of the Incarnation of our Lord to continue the practice of the nightly vigils. And so what they would do was they started something called Sab'a Warba'a. In English it's a little weird, 7 and 4, but the reason why it's Sab'a Warba'a is because they use the Sab'a Tadakiyat, so the 7 Tadakiyat of the weekdays, and they place them in between, in conjunction to the 4 canticles or Hoset of the nightly praises. So the way that we'll get into the structure and how that was exactly done in just a minute. One more note before I get into the structure in a little bit more detail is regarding the Arabic madayah, as we call them, or melodies. Sometimes they're called psalis, but typically they're called madayah, the melodies, okay? We didn't have any of these Arabic melodies existent in the church until the late 17th century and onward. They were added into the psalmody with the help of the printing press. They're more colloquial in their language. Their meaning is a bit more shallow. They're not really comparable to the teachings of the Alexandrian Church regarding the Incarnation. The Alexandrian Church is known for how deep its theology is, especially regarding the Incarnation and the nature of Christ and His salvation. So the Arabic madayah they came in a time where there was not much knowledge, and we can't really condemn the writers of these tadakiyat because they did what they could with their knowledge of these melodies. They did what they could with their knowledge at the time, but in comparison with the original teachings of our church, they were quite weak. And so they focused predominantly on preserving Arabic's poetic style. You'll see a lot of rhyming, rather than instilling proper theological teaching. And so, because they were easier for our congregations to use, they became the more prominent focus, rather than the original structure of the Tazbihah, which I will explain now. So, as I said before, the beginning structure of the nightly praises generally would be the midnight hour psalms, starting with Psalm 118, known as Du'unu, and then they would have the great canticle, known as Al-Hus al-Kabir, which is now labeled for Kiahk, and they say Al-Hus al-Kiahki. Really, it is a psalm, it is a group of psalms that can be prayed during any annual Tazbihah. It's not specific to Kiahk. However, because they did the nightly vigils, they preserved many hymns during Kiahk. They would continue on to the first canticle, which is taken from the praise of Moses in Exodus 15. And then afterwards, in order to use all the 7 tadakiyat, they would say the Monday tadakiyah after the first host, along with its lubsh, its explanation, and the Tuesday tadakiyah along with it's lubsh. Following those, they would enter into the second host, which is Psalm 126, which is regarding, it's a host of thanksgiving. And after the second host, they would pray the Tadakiyah of Wednesday and the Tadakiyah of Thursday. So now they have completed 4 Tadakiyat and 2 canticles. After that, they would pray the 3rd canticle, which is from the book of Daniel. And following that, they would pray the Tadakiyat of Friday and Saturday. So the only Tadakiyah that's left is the Sunday Tadakiyah, which will follow the 4th host. So they would pray the 4th host, which is Psalms 148 to 150, concluded by the long Alleluia, known as now as Al-Asr. However, it is the Alleluia concluding the 4th host. And finally, the Sunday Tadakiyah. I'll go into a little bit more detail about the Sunday Tadakiyah because it's quite interesting and imperative to our understanding of the praises in the church. In its original form, it is comprised of only 7 pieces. Each of the pieces is split into 2 sections. The first section has 2 refrains at the end, starting with Atwabai wa Niwan, and followed by Anun Hund and Dubh. The second piece, part B, or second section, would be ending with Atwabai Danshisi, Ja'o Saji, and Dendi Hud and Dubh. The focus of part A is to describe an object of the Old Testament. The focus of part B would be likening it to Saint Mary in relation to the incarnation of Christ in the New Testament. Following each of the, so like I said, it's 7 parts, and each of the parts is split into 2 sections. So after both parts of section 1, okay, they would have a tafsir, an explanation, written or known as an Ermenia, okay, and that's a Greek word meaning explanation. The Ermenias are originally in Coptic. The ones that we now use for Kiahk are also written recently. They're Arabic ones, and you find that they're not really in line with the words of the Tadakiyah itself. There are 2 sets of original Coptic explanations with specific refrains as well, following the same structure as the Tadakiyah. I'll get into a little bit more detail about that in a moment, but it's important to note that these Ermenias were said, followed by a portion of the Holy Gospel. So they would read a section of the Holy Gospel as well. Okay? And this structure was not only for Kiahk Psalmodies, it was the regular structure of the annual or the standard psalmody for every Sunday. It was preserved now mainly in Kiahk because of time constraints, etc. However, this is the normal structure of the Tadakiyah, and we have psalmodies and manuscripts that prove this. Following the Sunday Tadakiyah, you'd get up to part 7, which is Sherena Maria, and then that's section A. Section B would be Psalmody, followed by the Armenia, which is Modi Aro, which we now know as part 9 of the Sunday Tadakiyah, but it's actually the explanation of part 7. Shesh Fansob is actually a madiha, or a melody that was added during Kiahk. It doesn't follow the standard structure of the Sunday Tadakiyah, and it's written after the structure of another madiha known as Sodam Ona Radi, which is also Kiahki. The topic is completely different than the rest of the Tadakiyah, and the language and musical structure are different. So that's originally not part of it. So it would be the first 7 pieces plus their Ermenias and their gospel readings, and then Da'oin Hikanos, which came later, but would be sort of a lopsh for the Sunday Tadakiyah. And in Kiahk Tasbihah now we also have something called Tarh al-Fa'ala, or the exposition of the workers, which is also a part of the annual or standard praises for Sunday, and it's actually a very, very important exposition. It's very common in all of the old manuscripts, and its tune is quite old and used for multiple other things. This is just a brief overview of the structure of what is now Kiahk Psalmody and how it relates to the original structure of the standard praises in the Coptic Orthodox Church. I hope this video is beneficial. If you have any questions or concerns, I'd be more than willing to try and answer them if I can. And if I can off the bat, I will definitely do the research and get back to you all. Pray for me, and until next time. Thanks.